Hi, friends. Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Wendy Jo, and I want you to grow with me and my friend Ashley. How are you doing today, Ashley?
Hey, Wendy Jo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. This topic today, connecting with your spirit guide, is kind of near and dear to my heart because I didn't know I had one most of my life. And I think a lot of people might be in that boat. I don't know. Did you realize you had a spirit guide early on?
Um, no, I didn't. I don't know if I had any awareness of spirituality until about maybe like 2017, 2018 time frame.
Uh-huh.
And I became aware, but didn't really know what I
Okay.
was becoming aware of. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's like, okay, something feels different. I feel sensitive to something, but I don't actually know what it is. Is that
yeah.
kind
And
of
I
what you're
think I spent a lot of time ignoring it.
okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what do you feel like is connecting with your spirit guide? Like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, that's a great question. For me, I think we were talking about last time, I kind of came into spirituality a little later. Also, I was around 30. And like I said, I had no idea that I had a spirit guide. But when I started meeting with that mentor that I had from Scotland, and he was teaching me about it, it really resonated with me. Like I could feel it in my solar plexus, in my soul. I just knew what he was saying was the truth.
Um,
And that was that a spirit guide connected with me when I was still in the womb, around 7 months gestation with my mother, and I was born, and this guy stayed has been with me my whole life, and that's what he told me at the time. I was about 30. This guy connected when you were in the womb. They're still with you. Do you want to make a connection? Do you want to talk with them? And of course, I was like, yes. If they've been sitting there all this time trying to connect with me and sort of listening, yeah, I want to know what they have to say about my life, about what could help me, about what direction I should go in. In
yeah,
many areas, I felt a little lost. So it really resonated with me. And as soon as we started to make that connection, and I eventually started hearing her voice and learned her name, and it just felt really right for me. And it felt like my best friend who had been with me my whole life, knew everything about me, and really only has my best interest in mind.
yeah,
And that's, hard to come by. I think it's a real gift to realize that this spiritual being is right there for you.
yeah,
So it took a little while. I think a spirit guide. I think we have one main guide, and it will speak to us in many different voices and many different ways to try to get our attention. And I think that's why people often think they have several guides with them. That's not to say that there aren't other types of spiritual guides, but your one main guide will try attempt so many different ways that it seems like you've got a crowd around you, if you're tapped in at all or if you're sensitive to it.
Have you
Um,
ever heard people talk about like finder guides and like your health and wellness guides? Like, have you ever heard of people differentiate different types of guides that come in at specific times of your life for specific reasons?
yes, and I think that that's true. That it resonates with me that at different times, other masters or other types of guides will reach out. But I do think it's different than your one spiritual guide that stays with you all the way through.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think sometimes if you're really suffering a lot, you're in a bad space, you're agonizing over a decision. Sometimes, even if you really feel connected to your spirit guide, you know, it's weird. It's like familiarity in a
Mhm.
way. And then you're not, maybe not listening as clearly when you need to hear a specific message. So you may, a master type of guide may, come to you in some way to help you through that. Yeah. What are your thoughts about it? So have you felt connected for, you said, 2017, 2018.
Yeah, so I think that's when I started to recognize attempts at communication, but I only recognized it retrospectively. Like I didn't see it in the moment.
Mhm.
Um, I still feel like I'm developing really like I'm nowhere as like advanced as you are in this realm, this area.
Oh, we're all on a journey, Ashley.
Yeah.
You know?
And I get that. Like I don't feel like, I don't feel like I have to be, but I also recognize that there's a lot of development and work to do
Mhm.
on my behalf, right? And so a lot of people will talk about like spirit speaking. There's a voice, there's a sound, there's a tone, there's a personality that comes along with spirit. Um, I don't know, and maybe this is the way that I receive too. And this is the part that I haven't differentiated yet, but there's an intuitive nudge that I feel like um it's never a sound. I don't hear it,
Mhm.
but there's an experience that I have with myself that feels like communication, but there's no actual talking that occurs.
Right. I
It's
think some people will never hear, if, especially if you're not, we have all these senses. There's more than five senses. We also have, proprioception and, feelings, right? It's like another sense. Um, and so if auditory is not your go-to, they're gonna they're gonna speak to you, so to speak, in the way that you will hear and listen. So it might be, visual. When I first was connecting, um, I actually got a lot of visual stuff. I'm a really visual person, and so I would close my eyes at night and see like sentences written like a typewriter writing and sort of say it out loud. And I think that they also test you to see what will work.
yeah.
So for you, if it's this sensing feeling that works, that's what you're mostly going to get.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we've landed in this moment, and I would love to get to a place where we learn to engage with each other in other ways. But I've just gotten to a place where I started to listen and recognize that I am being guided. And
Nice.
so, I think I'm just here in this moment, liking that. I feel protected, I feel like I'm moving in a direction that's intentional, that is with purpose, all of those things. And so I feel really comfortable in the space. Like I feel like I just have a pillow around me right now. And
Mhm.
so I'm
That's
sure it's,
beautiful.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I'm sure when it's time to kind of evolve our relationship, I'm sure the opportunity will present itself. Who knows how it will? But in
Mhm.
this moment, I just, I feel fine.
Yeah, and I think realizing that whatever it is for you, it's very individual.
Mhm.
This being doesn't have a body, chose to guide someone and uh, landed with you. I do think it's kind of random. I don't think they select the fetus that they're going to connect with and stay with. It's sort of, a choice to become a guide and stay with someone, through their whole life. That's a big commitment, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
most people don't even talk to them, so they're just hanging out hoping,
yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate form of dedication.
right?
Seriously, like, a lot of people move through life and they're like, I don't have anybody, I don't have friends, I don't have this, I don't have that. But it's like, but you have somebody sitting right there. And it's not somebody. You have it, whatever it is you're seeking, sitting right there,
Right.
waiting for you to acknowledge it. So you know, I think there's a level of gratitude, that the opportunity to express gratitude that goes unused, untapped.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll be right back.
Everybody has a spirit guide. You have to build a relationship with your spirit guide. And sometimes when you don't ask when you don't ask, they won't come. You have to get in the habit of asking for your spirit guide. Gotta stay in the energy of gratitude, gotta pay attention. I don't believe I met my spirit guide until maybe 2017, 2018. And since I've been able to connect with my spirit guide, I felt so supported through all of my journeys, my personal journey, my entrepreneurial journey, my mother journey. All of the journeys have been divinely supported. I have moments when inspiration just strikes, and I know that I'm always protected. So I'm curious, how do you connect with your spirit guide?
Well, I love that video you made. It's really informative and to the point. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
So, what are some ways that you actually make the connection with your guide?
You know, it's been through a lot of meditation. I definitely require a lot of alone time. So I think maybe this is judgmental of me, but I think that because it's not a verbal exchange, that I feel like I need to spend more time with it in order to interpret it
Oh, okay.
and internalize it and like, make sense of it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so I think meditation is the main way where like I just need to be with myself. I need to feel it. I need to feel the message move through my body. I need to explore the emotions that I'm feeling at a given time, especially if I receive a ton of information or I go through a lot of like physical sensory overload. I need to like release all of that so I can be present again. But other ways that I've explored that I'm probably not as consistent with is like I use my tarot cards. Like I love them, especially if I feel like in a stuck place. That's my go-to. I know we explored the pendulum, which I've kind of reintroduced into my practice a little bit.
Nice.
And I mean, even cannabis consumption is a thing. So, I mean, it's just a lot that you can do to recenter yourself. Exercise also plays a big part because if I don't exercise, I realized this last week when I didn't go, it's not good.
Well, that's a good point. When you're making these connections and trying to understand yourself and the world better, it's really good to also incorporate other healthy things into your life.
Hmm.
So, because I feel like they all kind of work together.
They do.
And, if you're seeking your path, trying to figure out why you're here and what your purpose is, what better thing to do than take care of your body to keep you on that road, as you're connecting and opening up.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really good thing to do, and a good point. You know when you miss it,
Yeah.
when you feel it, when you miss it emotionally and physically, that's something you need in your life.
Yeah. And what it feels like I've stopped the flow of life force. You,
Hmm.
does that make sense? Like when you
Yeah.
exercise, it's like it gets your blood pumping, obviously that's the physical response, but that's the life force that's moving in and through you. And
Yes.
so like
It's all energy too, and your guide is energy because
mhm,
remember they don't have a body; they're a soul and energy.
mhm,
So I think that's equally important. What are you putting into your body? Are you moving, and are you making good choices for yourself? Which your guide can really help you with all of those things. Actually, I know you mentioned some things that I also use to connect: the pendulum, the cards, meditation. I feel like is really key. Being able to calm your mind and open up. The main way that I strengthened the connection was by clearing out my channel. So we all have sort of a channel to spirit, and for me, I suffered multiple traumas as a child and had buried a lot of that stuff. And part of my growth was opening all that up
Yeah.
and learning about it. It took me actually almost 10 years to really feel like I reached a point that my channel was pretty open, but it's still a journey. Things still come up
Yeah.
on the regular, but it took that work, of moving out of the way, the negativity, moving out of the way, any buried memories. And that opened my channel more and more. And I felt it. I felt it strengthen. So I think, it's kind of complicated, but to start adding meditation into your life daily, that's going to be a really great starting point for
Mhm.
anyone to make a connection, to open up a little more and open to new ideas too.
Yeah. And and I love that you brought up the channel work. I didn't recognize that's what that was called, but um, a lot of times I feel like we don't recognize the trauma that we experience because it's not the mainstream description of what trauma is.
Right.
So like you don't have to like be hit upside the head to experience trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You can have you could have broken a bone as a child and that could have been registered as trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? While it's just a minor injury that was fixed and you moved on, like a lot of times we don't recognize like it lodges itself within us and it blocks us from being able to connect with source
Yes.
and other alternative energies. So um,
Right. I absolutely agree. Especially if some of the things that I looked at may not seem that traumatic to someone else, right? But children, interpret things completely differently from a fully grown adult. And so, you know, something very mild that seems really mild at the time can sit in your brain because you're still looking at it from a child's point of view. And once you take it out and look at it as an adult, you can clear that, many times. I mean, maybe not always, but, even by just taking it out and looking at it, you're clearing out that channel more and more.
yeah, definitely. And that's when you go through that inner child work. And I think a lot of us are scared of it because it causes fear as young people. But
Mm-hmm.
most likely, if you confront it, it's usually something minor. I mean, unless you truly did suffer severe trauma. I'm not a trauma therapist, but
Right, 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 right. And, there are people, like me that did, suffer large traumas. And I say that, but some of these small things, we can't judge because we're not living in that person's body and mind. And
Mhm.
what seems really small to me, I've learned over the years, is
Big deal.
sometimes can drive someone's life in a direction they never wanted to go in, and it was a really minor thing that scared them
Mhm.
and made that change. So by taking it out and looking at it in a new perspective, now they may actually discover that, oh, my purpose really had nothing to do with this direction I went in because I was scared, and it can be absolutely life changing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I think approaching yourself with grace
Mm-hmm.
and compassion and recognizing that there's another being there to
Mm-hmm.
help support you to relieve some of the pressure of the fear, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's probably the best way to connect with spirit. And then you can take on those other practices to strengthen the relationship.
What a great way to put it. And as you're strengthening that relationship, you try different things like some of the things we mentioned, and there are many more also, and it just gets stronger and stronger. And before you know it, you realize you've got your best friend, sitting on your shoulder, ready to help you if you're in a tough spot.
Well, you know what? Let's take a break, Wendy. I think that was a lot that we covered here.
Yes.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The High Align Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
Hey there, friends. If you're an intuitive like me, you have thoughts and feelings about your own health and sometimes the health of others. What you're dealing with is medical intuition, but you probably don't know how to harness it. Hey, I met this wonderful woman named Gina, and she's doing a training on medical intuition with her company, The Heal World. Let's face it, there's lots of people getting sicker and sicker, and they often don't find answers with mainstream medicine. We have lots of technology, but we're missing the key, medical intuition. If you'd like to learn more, you could email her at gina@blisslife.com or give her a call at 352-888-2100. The Heal World. And we're back. So, Ashley, I don't know when you're doing the practice that you do, if you ever hear a voice that, or I know you don't hear, but feel an impression that's maybe kind of negative or not, doesn't seem like the same thing that you've been working with. Has that ever happened to you?
It did. And I think that's why earlier when I was talking about retrospectively, I knew that it was something different because I did feel like I was getting messages, not necessarily to do something negative, but not in my best interest.
Mm.
And so there were plenty of times where there were decisions that needed to be made that instead of listening to myself, I was listening to, like friends, family, parents, things like that.
Mm.
And what I've learned, and I think that goes back to the conversation about like that channel work and clearing yourself and aligning yourself. So, when you're making a decision from self versus being guided from everything else that's happening around you. And I think that's why it's so important to meditate too. So you can develop that relationship with self so you can be a little bit more confident about the direction that you're going.
Good points. Yeah. So when I was first on my path, and it's happened other times too, and I was kind of struggling with figuring out myself, because spirituality is really learning who you are and learning to be that person all the time. That's part of it. I would hear something or get that impression, and it was kind of negative. And so what I learned was, we as children have a shadow self or chameleon self that takes the brunt of anything bad that happens, right? So that's partly why people don't remember stuff, because this sort of alter ego, it's part of you, but not. It's the thing that holds all the negative stuff, right? And so when you're trying to make changes and grow and really become yourself, you're kind of leaving that shadow self behind, or the chameleon self. You're leaving it behind, and it will try to fight and stay there. So you might get these messages that just don't seem right. Like your guide is not going to tell you to do anything bad. They're not going to put you down. They're not going to give you a hard time. Like, they're there to help and serve and be there for you. So if you do get some of that, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's part of the process. And what you do is, you don't make friends with it. Just say, I don't need you anymore. You may have helped me when I was a kid to forget that, they made me sit at the table for 3 hours because I wouldn't eat, or, or, far worse, whatever it is, right? Or some misunderstanding. But I don't need you anymore. Right. So the more you really push it away, the less of it you'll feel and see. And it's, I feel like spirituality is really logical and straightforward. And so you don't want more of that, just say no.
I think I think an important part of it too is like we don't listen to the people that love us either. So getting that feedback from loved ones and like really receiving it to help you recognize how you're presenting yourself. So an example of I'm very driven and actually I have been quite hard on myself. And it also presented itself in the way that I engage my family earlier in my marriage. And so everybody around me is saying, hey, like, why are you so hard on us? Why are you so hard on us? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't treat, I'm resisting. Why I wouldn't treat you any different than I would treat myself.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of resisting, really listening to that feedback and recognizing like that's not okay behavior. It's very abusive behavior that you're putting on towards your family and towards myself. I'm not giving myself grace and compassion. And then I'm passing that on to other people because I think that it's okay.
Oh, okay. I got you.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Many, many of us are, expect ourselves to be perfect, right?
Mhm.
And always do the right thing. And the fact is we're human,
Yeah.
and we're part of the journey is making mistakes and not being perfect. And that's how you grow,
Yeah.
But I do think anyone who has suffered any type of trauma, small or large, it doesn't matter, can really fall into that being very hard on themselves and holding themselves to a higher standard. I'll tell you recently, because I also do that, and I've been trying to break it, not be so hard on myself. Um, and I had this epiphany. I was meditating, and Nate is my guide, and she said, "You are just like everyone else."
Oh.
Right.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I had to really think about this message. Like, was I thinking that I was somehow better, or I don't know, maybe that's why I'm so hard on myself. I think I should be like
Before.
perfect, but I
Yeah.
give other people grace.
Yeah.
I'm more like that. Like I'll make excuses for other people all day long.
Yeah. But
Well,
you won't give yourself. You won't give yourself grace. You won't give yourself permission to be flawed.
right.
That
But
was
that message really resonated with me to as a like, oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Why am I doing this to myself? So, I'm really grateful to have that connection and get these messages that often are like very timely
yeah.
and help me to have a better life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think all of that is so important. So if you don't have a connection, pay attention, right? If you do have a connection, still pay attention.
Yes. Very good advice. So yeah, pay attention if you're just getting started and you want to make that connection. Start to pay attention is number 1, and choose some sort of tool to help you. We've mentioned a few here, and as we go along in the Grow podcast, we're going to do some whole episodes about some of these tools. But for now, just sitting with yourself, is a perfect way to get started.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. This was great.
It was wonderful. And we're going to wrap up episode 2 of the Grow podcast. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.